Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. At this point I put a decent amount of time into squad, roughly 120 to 130 hours, and I'm still really enjoying it. And really all I've been doing is infantry roles, and I've barely scratched the surface with the vehicle play. There's so much to this game, and I feel like there's something new to learn every time I play it. And I think I've pretty much got the hang of the ins and outs of this game. Like any game that you start on, as you learn the ropes, you start to notice common mechanics, strategies, and player behaviors. Things like setting up fobs, spawning, gunfight mechanics, and the overall flow of matches start to become more familiar as you play. And at the same time, like other games, you do notice things that players don't do enough of that would be helpful. I want to quickly go over a few of those things that I think players should start doing or try out if they haven't already. So for today's video, I'm going to go over 5 topics. Using the map while you're fighting, using free look more, hip firing, trying to use the fun switch more, and smokes, and more smokes. If you're already familiar with one of these points, feel free to skip ahead using the timestamps in the description below. Let's start with going over some of the ways you can get better use of the quick map. You should start using the quick map as a combat map for those times that you're about to get into a gunfight or get ambushed.
Bye-bye.
First off, if you haven't already done it, you need to remap the default key to something more convenient than the M key. The M key is quite the stretch across the keyboard, so if you don't switch it, you're going to have a hard time pulling up the map on the go, or if you're in the middle of a heated fight. I have my map bound to one of my mouse buttons for quick and easy access. It's pretty obvious that with little to no HUD in this game, the map becomes very useful when it comes to checking where enemies have been marked, move markers, objectives, and locations of your team. Realistically, for what you don't have on your HUD, the map makes up for. So what about the map? You look at it, it shows you things. What more? Well, that's what I want to talk about. The quick map is such a useful tool to also show you where things aren't. You need to treat the map as a reference for what's unknown, kind of like fog of war. With that said, I really think you should start using your map more when you're in a fight. When I'm in an area, I'm always keeping myself aware of the general location of the entire team, and especially the location of my squad or friendlies within my immediate area. Simply put, if I always know the location of teammates within the area, anything else that moves outside of that is likely an enemy. To get even more basic with it, if your squad mates are to your left and your right as you're pushing through an area, anything and everything ahead of you is not friendly. With that basic knowledge going into a fight or traversing through the map, you can make quicker decisions without questioning or taking the time to identify a player as enemy or friendly. So here's a quick example of using the map in the way I was describing. I'm set up to put down some sniper cover for my squad, and just after using the map to check the range I'll be shooting at, I hear some creeping footsteps in the grass behind me. So I quickly pull my map up to see if there are friendlies or anywhere near me, and realize that I'm alone. And boom, the jerk was attempting to cut me. Let's see that again. Look at the surprise in his face. He had no idea that I knew he was behind me. You should already be using your map to quickly identify vehicles. If you hear a vehicle nearby, pull the map up quickly and see if there's a blue vehicle roaming around you. If there isn't, well guess what? That's an enemy Vic. Same thing with hearing gunshots. If you aren't already familiar with what each weapon sounds like when it's fired, you can still use your map. If you hear firing from a direction where your map shows no friendlies, well, those are enemies shooting. The last point I want to make about the quick map is to keep a watch on your friendly blueberries. If there is a fight near you, quickly look and see if any teammates have been downed in the area. This is shown on the map as a slightly faded friendly icon. Living player icons will be bright, clear, and likely moving around. If you see a faded, non-moving friendly, well, they've been downed, which means there are enemies near that player. Again, I'm sure this comes as obvious to some or probably most, but I actually am still surprised when I hear players come through the open chat comms asking if nearby Vics are friendly or not. Checking your map will answer a lot of questions that you might have while in game. Now moving on to the second point, the free look control. I'm pretty seasoned in more arcade shooters like Call of Duty, Battlefield, and Halo, and those games don't have any free look controls. I gotta say, I kinda wish they did because it's so useful. If you don't know what free look is, it's a function that allows you to look around without actually changing the direction you and your weapon is facing. Think of it as turning your head side to side while your body stays still. Free look is located on the left alt by default. I haven't changed this because it's already convenient to reach with my thumb. You have to hold the key down for the duration of the time you're free looking, and when you release the button, your view snaps back to where you were looking before. At first, coming off of those games I mentioned like Call of Duty and Battlefield, I didn't really use the free look that much because I was already used to not having it. At this point, I've actually made an effort to use it more, and I even still catch myself not using it when I'm trying to get a good look around scanning for enemies. So far, I've found free look to be the best when you're crossing roads, scanning urban environments, fields, or just looking around the map to see how cool everything looks. One thing that you might not have known about the free look is when you ADS, you can actually free look at the same time, making for a zoomed free look. If you have a scoped optic, use this to your advantage as you can get that zoomed look outside of the confines of your optic itself. The last thing I want to mention about the free look control is that it's great for when you're needing to post up on an angle or are covering an area from hostiles. Doing this, you can keep your weapon pointed in the direction of danger while you're able to free look other directions just to kind of check around and get that overall awareness. Alright, on to the next one. Let's talk about hip firing. If you're not already hip firing for anything close range, you really need to start doing that now. I'm talking about any CQC situation and for those holy shit moments when you find an enemy by surprise. Hip firing in this game is actually deadly accurate. Basically, wherever the barrel of your weapon is pointed is where those bullets are going to go. There's no recoil pattern to learn here, just point and shoot. You will need to get used to where your shots land when hip firing. They're going to land a little lower than the center of the screen, whereas when you ADS, you're aiming center screen. Once you get used to that, you won't need to ADS on anything close range. As you can see in the clip, when aiming down sights, your reticle is positioned on the center of the screen and the shot will land where you aim. If you pull back to the hip firing and look at the exact same spot where you're aiming down sights, you'll notice that shots fired from the hip are slightly lower than the center of your screen, more or less oriented with where the muzzle of the barrel is. I would also argue that recoil control is going to be much easier to manage while firing from the hip versus ADS shooting. This is due to the sensitivity difference between being in the ADS and at the hip. And remember that hip firing is going to be faster than taking the time to bring the sights to your face. So next time you think there are enemies nearby, choose to shoot from the hip and move fast instead of creeping corners while you're hard scoping. Take note that if you get too close to a wall, you won't actually be able to fire your weapon. That doesn't matter whether you're firing from the hip or aiming down sights. So make sure that you're giving yourself enough clearance as you move around and engage. The next point is more of a suggestion, but I think that it would be good for your health to run on full auto more. I know most people aren't going to agree with me, but I'm the kind of player that keeps my weapon on fully auto and take the time to learn how to one-tap the trigger for those ranged shots. Trust me, playing on fully auto is very beneficial. The way I see it, staying on full auto means one less thing you have to think about if you're going from a ranged fight to CQC battles. When it comes to trigger control on the mouse, running full auto also means that you spend less time tapping the left click, potentially throwing off some shots kind of similar to trigger control. But even for long and mid-range fighting, if you learn how to fire a quick controlled burst, man oh man, you're going to drop players quickly. Where this could get weird is with the burst M4 and the crappy G3 rifle. I still keep the M4 on burst because it's actually very controllable when it comes to one-tapping and holding longer for the burst that you might need. The G3 is tough to control on auto, but once you get used to it, you can still throw quick, accurate bursts. I've spent a considerable amount of time in the Jensen's training range going through each weapon trying to get used to their full auto handling. I have to say, it was worth it. To test this out, I would basically choose a spot on the ground in the distance to practice burst firing. The way the dust kicks up gives you a visual indication to where your shots landed, so you can make the adjustment to how you control the burst. Try this out and I bet you'll get more confident with using weapons in full auto. All in all, like I said, this is more of a suggestion from my own experience. I haven't found a single point where I've cursed about having my weapon on full auto or burst, but I've definitely cursed about not having it on auto when I think I could have used it. This typically happens when I forget to switch my weapon back to full auto after spawning at a hab. So, quick tip, your weapon is going to reset to semi whenever you spawn back at a hab. The last point I want to cover is busting out the smoke grenades. I gotta say, I still don't see players using smokes enough. They're great for any time you need to cross through open areas or getting out of sticky situations where you're pinned down. Smokes are good for offensive and defensive strategies, but ultimately the operation of them is either creating concealment for yourself or trying to blind the enemy. One thing you need to do when using smoke to conceal is to throw it towards the enemy rather than at your feet. By doing that, you're actually cutting down more angles of view for the enemy while giving yourself more room to move. I've also seen some players use their smokes for signaling, which is actually kind of cool to me. Especially those colorful smokes like the blues and the reds and the yellows. You can use them to signal landing spots for choppers or marking enemy locations for fire support. Overall, smokes are an important tool that I think still aren't used enough in general by players in the game. So to close off that point quickly, when in doubt, get the smokes out. Well, that's about all I have for you today. If you're not doing these things that I've covered, I really think you should be considering starting or at least trying them out. I'm still really enjoying this game, and I think people tend to forget that you can play this game in so many different ways. You can get deep with the tactics and strategy, and on the opposite, you can absolutely send it for the lols and fun times. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that it was at least a little bit helpful. Feel free to leave your comments below and let me know if you agree, disagree, or have some helpful tips to offer. And if you're interested in catching my next videos, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell for immediate upload notifications. Otherwise, you can catch me on Twitch where I stream 3 days a week and generally stick to the first-person shooter genre. Currently, I'm playing tons of squad because I don't think I'll get sick of it anytime soon. Well, that's it for me. Enjoy the game, and I'll catch you on the battlefield. Peace out.
Oh god!